What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 426. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your limited resources, and joining me on the bed, right next to me here in our hotel room in Bilbao, Spain, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing all right. I picked my deck for the Pro Tour about 15 minutes ago.
I've got a text message from you as I was waiting for you to finish selecting your deck, and it says, should be ready soonish. And then less than a minute later, in a tailspin now.
Yeah.
Kind of sums up how your constructed choices have gone for this one, doesn't it?
Things got hectic. It just turns out Modern is just a very deep format, and trying to pick a deck is tough because there's just a lot of options, tested a lot of different things, and finally ended up, I guess by the time this show goes up, you'll have seen on Grixis Death's Shadow, which not the most daring choice, but it is the deck I played the most, and yeah, it was between that and Jund Death's Shadow, and a Jessica deck I played literal 0 games with. So I decided to have some respect for the game, and
this is mandated by your team.
That is our team rule, and ended up playing with Grixis Death's Shadow.
All right. Well, we're here, of course, in Spain for Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan, and this is going to be the Rivals of Ixalan Insider Show for the Pro Tour testing, and going to get Luis's take. He's been doing a lot of thought about Limited, a lot of playing, and of course, you've been talking to Ben and everybody on the team?
Not Ben. No, Ben.
Not Ben.
I'll get into that later, but not Ben.
Okay. But the rest of the team?
No, we had a very productive limited meeting today. It was great. You should have come, actually. It was really good.
Yeah, I tried to, but I had to work as it turned out.
And I think I've done more drafts of this format than I have the last couple formats.
You're loving this format.
I actually hit my benchmark high on Magic Online. I hit a 1991 rating, just slamming Rivals. So,
we're going to find out how you got to such a high rating. Wow, that is insane. We're going to do all of that and more here on this episode. First, we got to talk about our sponsor. That's channelfireball.com, the place to go for all things Magic related on the internet. You can find draft videos on there. In fact, our Patreon question of the week references some of the draft videos that this patron had watched. And this is just part of the suite of free content that you can get on Channel Fireball that is right in line with what we do here on LR. We know that you come to the show to improve at Magic so that you can keep that train rolling. You know, that's a big appeal to Magic for a lot of players, especially nuts and bolts spikes, which, a lot of our listener base is. And another way, there's always ways for you to improve at Magic. And one of the big ones is by watching other people play. It's really hard to replace that. Getting a chance to sit over your shoulder and watch you play Luis or, read Duke or any of the greats that we have over on CFB. That's the kind of stuff that just wasn't around, 15 years ago or whatever.
Certainly, and I think it is a very good resource. I think that the breadth of free strategy available and the quality is just so much higher than it used to be. And you can find a lot of it at channelfireball.com.
While you're there, of course, you can pick up Rivals of Ixalan. It's for sale right now. And anything you need on the supply side as well, you're going to find over at CFB. We do recommend checking them out. Also, the Patreon, that's how you can support the show directly. Super easy. Patreon.com/limited resources. All the information is there. One of the things you get for being a patron, by the way, is you get to submit questions for the Patreon question of the week. This one comes from Jonathan, who says, "Hi guys, great show. I've been watching CFB draft videos for Rivals, and I'm noticing that almost all the pack one pick ones end up in the deck, even when it seems to me like the first pick's color isn't really open. Is don't marry your first pick a principle that doesn't apply in Ixalan, or is this like pro basketball players missing free throws? A lapse in fundamentals, but the DeAndre Jordans of MTG are just so good that it doesn't matter, or is don't marry your first pick a piece of advice that sounds smart but is not followed, like don't take too many three-pointers in the NBA." I appreciate the basketball references there, Jonathan, but, fundamental questions are important because you'll hear us talk about that on this show, right? See what's open. Don't get married to your first pick. But Jonathan's correct. A lot of them end up making the deck in Rivals.
Yeah, and I'm glad you've asked the J.R. Smith of Magic in order for me to answer this question.
Are you the J.R. Smith of Magic?
Well, maybe Lance Stevenson. I don't know.
Yeah, you're way more Lance Stevenson.
That hits our quota of sports references for the show. Don't worry.
Lance Stevenson of Magic.
So this is actually a really funny story because we were talking, and we always talk, don't get too married to your first pick. What percentage should you play it? And I remember talking with Ben about this and Owen, and it's like, you should play your first pick like 40% of the time or something like that. And someone, I don't remember their name, it escapes me, but they did some really good research. They somehow, and I don't really even know how, they did a scan of all the CFB draft videos and all the covered drafts at Pro Tours the last couple of years of gold level pros and above. The percent that people play their first pick is like 70%.
Wow.
In both, almost exactly. So what that indicates to me is that people just get married to their first pick. Pros and, in this case, it was basically all looking at all pros and people who made videos. So what that means, I think, is that even the people who say this advice don't do a very good job following it. Myself included, yourself included, Ben included, Owen, everyone. Yep. There's no one with a proportion that was like a really much lower percentage of abandoning their first pick. So people tend to stick to their first pick more than they should.
Do you think that they should stick to their first pick in Rivals more than they would in an average?
Rivals is a little different because there's two things going on. One is that the best cards are so much better than the next tier. Like we made in our limited meeting a list of I don't remember 12. It was like 12ish cards that you should take over every common and uncommon, and it's not even close. So we didn't even bother discussing them. And those cards are so good. Like if you're opening, your Tetzamach or your, World Pyre Phoenix, whatever the thing is called, or
Rekindling.
Yeah, Rekindling Phoenix or Profane Procession. Like these are cards that even if the color's not open, it behooves you to be in those colors. And because you're talking about like things that are close to 10s on a scale, right, of 1 to 10.
Right.
And again, we've said this before. It's not a linear scale. A 10 is not twice as good as a 5. A 10 is many times better than a 5. Mm-hmm. So even if a color isn't open, these cards are so good. And the other thing is, unlike Ixalan, Rivals of Ixalan offers a lot of playables. So you end up with enough playables in the set that I found that you can switch colors in pack 2 or be in a color that's cut because you first picked Tetzamach, second picked Impale. So I know they're black cards, but it doesn't matter because you'll get 3 or 4 black cards from pack 2 and then you have to find
dinosaur hunters or whatever. It's like whatever.
You have to find at least one open color. You probably can't be drafting blue-black next to someone drafting blue-black. But, as long as you have one open color, if you have a couple first picks in that color in your other color, you should still play them. So it's a very good question.
Yeah, I like that question. Thank you, Jonathan. We're going to do our Rivals Crack-A-Pack. This is going to help kind of shape our discussion here as well. All right, first card, Moment of Triumph.
I think combat tricks are a lot worse than they were in Ixalan. The format's a little bit slower, and you don't need them as much. It's a playable card, but not one I'm going to first pick.
Yeah, Crashing Tide.
Solid card.
It's been a little slow for me. I love this type of card, but it's been a little like...
Yeah, so it's tuna blue, bounce creature, draw a card at sorcery speed, and then if you have a merfolk, you can play it as an instant. It's really good in aggro, and passable but cuttable in control.
Right. Orazka Raptor.
It's just unplayable, 4 mana, 3/4.
Right. It's just...
I mean, you'll play it if you need a 23rd card, but I have yet to play this card.
It's funny because you just mentioned that you feel like there's more playables in this set, and I think there are too. And this is the type of card that's a casualty to that. Like, you just rarely need that level, especially at the 4-drop slot. Voracious Vampire, that's the 2 and a black 2/2 with Menace. When it enters the battlefield, you can give another target vampire menace.
Not a high pick. There's a lot of 3-drops in this format. This card is, even in a vampire deck, not a
I thought it would be better than it's ended up.
Yeah, it's just not
great. Really mediocre. Plummet, sideboard.
Shoot up sideboard.
Recover. This card's been getting a lot more play than I thought it would. And I've been kind of impressed by it. 2 and a black sorcery. You get a creature back from your graveyard to your hand and you draw a card.
This is a playable sometimes, but it's not a card I ever prioritize. I generally will play 0 to 1 of them.
Yeah, like in fact, going back through the cards that we've looked at so far, I wouldn't want any of these.
No, I can't imagine first picking any of these cards.
Yeah, but the next one I can. It's Impale.
Yep, 2 black, sorcery, destroy target creature. One of the best commons. I like Luminous Bonds over Impale, but I like Impale over all the other common removal. Every color has a good common removal spell.
Yeah, so black actually has 2, right? It has Moment of Craving as well. Do you like first Impale or first Moment of Craving more?
First Impale.
Okay.
I would take 1 Impale, and then I'd probably take second Impale over Moment of Craving as well.
Really?
Depending on what the rest of your deck looks like. If it's like 1-2, I would take Moment, but I would certainly start with the first Impale.
Wow. Because I'm closer to wanting the first moment and then impale after that.
Yeah, I don't think you're supposed to do that.
I'm just hating it. Like if my opponent says Goblin Trailblazer go, and I'm staring at impale, I'm going to take like 8 from the stupid thing before I get it going. Where if I have that early defense, those cards that just take out all of those cheap evasive cards, the Kitesail Corsairs and that kind of stuff, I feel like,
I agree that you do need early plays, but I think that the big threats are good enough that you should start with impale.
You want to have the bomb situation handled. Okay. Evolving Wilds.
Playable.
Yeah.
I think there are some decks that take this like around 4th or 5th pick, but most decks are just not that interested.
Because you have treasure. Buccaneer's Bravado. This is a card that has been explosive. It's 1 in a red instant. Give a creature +1/+1 first strike or double strike if it's a pirate.
Yeah, not a card I really like all that much. And I also think that the pirate
We're getting good hints at where you're going.
Well, I think the pirates deck is particularly bad.
Really? Which pirates deck?
The red-black one specifically.
Oh my god, that's my favorite deck in the format.
Yeah, that's our consensus worst deck among our
Wow! Oh, we've got some stuff to talk about here. I think I have 3 trophies and they're all red-black pirates.
I have 11 trophies and they're all with pirates, but not very many. They're the red-black ones.
Here's my first pick out of the pack, Bombard.
2 in a red, instant, deal 4. I have this behind Impale.
Okay, I like this one a little better than Impale right now, but then again, I like the red-black pirates.
I think yes, that makes sense. So basically, I think if you look at Impale, Bombard, Luminous Bonds, and Waterknot, it's all on color preference.
Okay,
and Hunt the Weak as well.
You think they're all comparable though?
They're all comparable.
Yeah.
I think Hunt the Weak is worse than the rest of them. Yeah. Like in terms of just like what the cards do. And I think Waterknot is the second worst. But I think all the rest of them, it's just color preference.
Okay. Foul Orchard is our first.
This is the green-black dual land that comes to play tapped. I think you just take those as opportunity presents. You don't need to. You don't need to use them for high picks, but because you're so playable flooded and because splashing is often easy, I'll usually speculate on random dual lands just in case.
Okay. We've got a really good pack here. This is Deadeye Brawler.
Yeah, this is 2 blue-black for a 2/4 Death Touch. It's a pirate, and if you have the City's Blessing, when it hits the opponent, you draw a card.
I've been loving that card.
Oh, yeah.
I love that.
This is a combo of Sea Legs.
How so?
They always double block it. Then you Sea Legs your pirate.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Oh, do you think I haven't run that one? Also, sometimes you can ascend out of nowhere. You attack with 9 permanents. They don't block it. You sea legs their creature,
that's
and then.
Great. So now the question, of course, is this better than Impale or Bombard?
So I think if you're already blue-black, it's better than Impale.
Yeah.
But I would not start by taking it over Impale or Bombard.
I wouldn't either. And I think it's close, though. I really like that card. Now, here's another strong uncommon. We've got some really good cards.
Beta.
Huh? What'd you say?
Regisaur Beta.
Oh, Regisaur Beta. Yes, Crested Herd Collar. That's great. It's 3 green, 3/3 trample. And like Regisaur Alpha, trample. You get another 3/3 trample. So, card's really good.
Yeah. I would take it under the common removal spells.
So you like Impale or Bombard above this card?
Yes. So on power level, I think this card is better than Impale, Bombard, Luminous Bonds, Waterknot. On color preference, it's not. I think green's the worst color.
Man, this is... I think we're going to have a real interesting...
Well, I have some opinions about this format.
Yeah, this is great.
There's a lot of play to this format. There's a lot of different ways to go. And like I said, our limited meeting today was interesting because of that.
God, I wish I could have gone.
Oh, it was so good. It was just like the best ever.
Whatever. Jade Light
I guess
Ranger
Paul was there.
is a rare. It's a rare. This guy's good too.
Yeah, 1 green for a 2/1. Enters the battlefield, it explores, then explores again into Merfolk. So again, this I think is slightly better than the Crested Herd Collar. Mm-hmm. And I would never blame someone for taking these cards over Impale. Mm-hmm. But I think start with Impale over these cards. Start with Impale. There's not that many directions for green to go. So right now in this pack, which is a very good pack by the way, this is why Rivals is sweet. There's all these playables.
This is a really good pack.
I have Impale, Bombard, Daylight Rager, Crested Herd Collar, and Deadeye Brawlers as cards that are all plausible first picks.
Was that the order you would pick them in as well?
I would pick them in... Yeah, actually, Jade Light Rangers. I would pick them in Impale / Bombard first, followed by Jade Light Ranger, followed by Herd Collar. And then I think that Deadeye Brawlers is good, but I don't think you're supposed to take it over any of these cards.
But Gold Card is a tough tax to pay here. Pick one when you've got these kind of options available. Yeah, I view Impale as the default pick here. I think I would probably take Jade Light Ranger. I've liked that card a lot and just found it very powerful. So there's our pack.
Yep.
And I have had a chance to talk to some of the pros. I can't tell you what they told me. But I have my own opinions as well, as I've been drafting the ever-loving out of this format. I have as well.
Ever-loving what?
You know. Where are you at on it?
So
give us a big picture on what you were. I want to know where you're at specifically. And then also, you know, this is the Pro Tour Testing Insider as well. If you've got a bigger picture view that's different, I'd like to hear that.
So,
and by the way, I haven't heard this stuff yet. So this is me too. I'm stoked.
So I think that like from a big picture, and this is where I do agree with my team. And this is where we came to after a lot of discussion. Mm-hmm. I think that green is the worst color, and part of the reason is that there are not any good color pairs with green except red. Okay. Because merfolk, blue-green, the merfolk just suck. Like, there just aren't...
They suck.
There are not very many, and they're not very good. And
they've taken a major hit from Ixalan.
They have. Ixalan, they were great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're missing, like, really key cards.
So I think, like in Ixalan, I think you could have, like, 1.5-ish merfolk decks per table. Like, some tables could, depending on the packs, could support 2 merfolk drafters and both have very good decks. Mm-hmm. Some, if you were to only one, you'd have a good deck. I think in Rivals of Ixalan, merfolk, there's, like, 0.8 per table. Which means that sometimes you could be the only merfolk drafter and it still not get a good deck.
No, that sounds right.
Which is a horrible place to be because, especially since they were so good in Ixalan, I expect there to be closer to 1.5 merfolk drafters per table, which leads us to not want to take merfolk Mistbinder first pick.
No, and that's the interesting part about it is that when you look at a snapshot, you see, okay, there's a bunch of merfolk here still. And your brain kind of goes, okay, there's some common merfolk. And you don't really parse out exactly what's there yet. But you see merfolk Mistbinder at uncommon and you're like, boom.
Yeah, clearly a great card, right?
Like that card's better than any of the ones from before. Yeah, it's just unreal. And so you're really, really excited about it. But when you start playing the set, you get Jungleborn Pioneer. That card's good.
Yeah.
I've liked that one. But, you know, Deeproot Warrior.
River Darter.
River
Sworn
Darter
Guardian.
sucks.
Like,
Sworn
this is like
Guardian
the 2-3 for 3, the 1-3 for 2. Jade Bear, the 1-1 for 1.
I think Jade Bear is not very good. It's low impact. You know, Mistcloaked Herald has its place in the game.
This is the 1-mana 1 unblockable.
Yeah, but it's still not
But you're also not going to get that late because the Blue-Red Pirates decks are going to take that from you.
Yeah, and, you know, the 2-1 that can't be blocked by
so Corsair.
Guiltgrove
Stalker.
Guiltgrove Stalker.
That card is good.
Fine. Yeah, it's fine, but like...
But again, the other decks will take that.
Yes, other decks will take it, the green-red deck or whatever. But you know what you don't get? Our favorite card from Ixalan, right? Remember, like, week 1, we were all over River Herald's Boon?
Yeah.
That broke that.
Yes. Like River Herald's Boon was the payoff. There's no common payoff for being merfolk.
Yeah.
And even though there is a good uncommon payoff in the Mistbinder and some good rare payoffs, right?
Yes.
Like there are a couple.
Light Ranger.
Well, Jade Ranger's not a merfolk payoff. It's just a merfolk that happens to be great. But there's Kumena, Tyrant of Orozca, Mythic Rare.
Yep.
And then there's
Seafloor Oracle.
Seafloor Oracle, you know, at rare, which is very good. This is the 2-3 that gives all your merfolk curiosity, you know, whenever you hit them, draw a card. But, so in general, we don't like merfolk. And I agree with that. I have not, my results of merfolk just have not been.
Mine have sucked too,
I think that Vampires is great. And not vampires exactly, just white-black. Yeah, the white cards and the black cards are all very good.
Yep.
You want to know what the worst white common is?
What's that?
It's a Sun Sentinel. This is the one of the white 2/2 vigilance.
There's not a worse one than that?
That's the worst.
I'm assuming sideboard cards aren't applying here.
Yeah, Cleansing Ray is a sideboard card, or Cleansing Light. But
Cleansing Ray.
Yeah, but that's
What's the
worst.
Next, like, wow.
That's the worst white card. Every single white common is playable.
That's insane. Yeah. I mean, I haven't actually looked at this. Is that true? Like, are the words?
Yeah, we laid them all out today. Like, you know, you have
you guys
Luminous Bonds, Exultant Sky Marcher.
Why did I miss this meeting?
You know, you have like those two. Another card, which is I think very underrated right now, Suncrested Pterodon, the 2/5.
You like that card a lot right now?
Oh yeah, that card's great. Martyr of Dusk.
Oh, this is getting good.
You know, Snubhorn Sentry, Divine Verdict, Legion Conquistador.
Snubhorn Sentry is one you have above it?
No,
above the 2/2.
Oh yeah, I think it's better than the 2/2. Snowboard Sentry's good. Wild Nikado. So
no hyperbole here.
So you know, basically, like the white cards are all good. You know, and then you have the Glorifier.
Raptor Companion.
Raptor Companion's fine. Yeah, I think it's better than the Sentinel. You know, Squire's Devotion. Like every white card is playable to.
I'm looking at the list now.
Yeah, they're all good. But there's not that many vampire payoffs, and the same is true of black. There's no, Anointed Deacons or anything like that. But all the black and white cards are good, and then they happen to be vampires, so if you do get something like a Legion Lieutenant, which is the Vampire Lord 2-mana 2/2, all your vampires get +1. That is a very high pick. That is a card I take over all the common removal spells.
Sure.
So, white-black is great.
Can you talk about, I don't know if you have a bigger picture besides just white-black, but you just dropped Snubhorn Sentry and Suncrested Pterodon as good cards.
The Pterodon more than the Sentry.
Coming in, that was not the case.
They did not look good. So
they still don't look good. So what do you like about them?
Well, the Pterodon especially just blocks so well. A 5-mana 2/5 blocks well. It often has Vigilance, but it doesn't even matter that much whether it gets Vigilance or not. This isn't a dinosaur card. And it can also chip in the air. This card it's resilient to a lot of the removal spells. It still gets hit by, Impale, Water Not, Luminous Bonds, but it doesn't get hit by Bombard, and often doesn't get hit by Hunt the Weak. Can block everything at its mana cost or lower, pretty much. And so a big part of how I personally draft the format is I like taking advantage of a lot of the cards that I feel are not heavily drafted. And of course, ironically, this podcast might actually change that, but I like constructing a deck that I feel like the defensive measures are good, and you just if you look through the white and the blue commons, there's a lot of cards I want for this defensive, more defensive style of deck that other people are not really taking high picks, so you can use your high picks on removal or bombs or whatever, but still end up with plenty of playables for I think a deck that, if you play your Suncrested Pterodon, there's a chance it blanks their 2 and 3 and 4 drop, right? Obviously, if they remove it or have a combat trick, that's different, but you get to play other cards too. When you play a Sailor of Means and it can block their 2 and their 3 drop, which sometimes it can't, because there is a Menace creature, there's a Guilt-Grove Stalker, though. The Menace creatures you can actually crowd out, because when you curve Snubhorn Sentry into Gleaming Barrier into Sailor of Means, good luck. 11
toughness on turn 3.
Yeah, I've cast Slaughter the Strong with 5 creatures and play, not had to sacrifice any of them. So, and then black, how black has Impale and Moment of Craving, blue has Water Knot and Sea Legs, so it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it.
Yeah, if you play turn 3 Sailor, means they attack into it, use a combat trick, you Sea Legs or Sailor, that's basically game.
Yeah,
using the treasure counter.
It's like having a Pterodon on the ground.
Yeah. So anyway, going back to the big picture, I think white black is quite good. Basically Esper color of cards, white, blue, and black, I think all combine really well. I think white black is good. I think white blue is quite good. My most drafted deck is white blue, and I'll get into exactly how I end up doing that. But and then blue black is good. I don't like red very much, and I don't like green very much. And I don't like them because I feel like that a lot of their color pairs aren't good. Though, funnily enough, red and green combined are quite good because you have the Stampeding Horncrest, the 5-mana 4/4 haste. If you control a dinosaur, and that's another card you get with 4 cards left in the pack all the time.
Yeah.
And that card is good. 5-mana 4/4 haste is great. That is a good rate. And the dinosaur deck, has a lot of really good uncommons as well. So where I tend to land and where a lot of our team tends to land is if Dinosaurs is open, if you get pulled into it because you open Forerunner of the Empire, this is the red Forerunner, which is really good.
That card is excellent. Super good, yeah.
Or Needletooth Raptor, or Reckless Rage, one of the premier, those are the best 3 red uncommons. Or you open one of the good green uncommons like the Crested Herd Caller, or the Thrashing Bronzedon, the 3-mana 3/4.
Love that guy.
And you end up in red-green dinos if that's open. That deck is very good. Or white-black, or white-blue, or blue-black. And there are some other decks. You like
so
the
you
red-black.
don't like blue-red, you don't like blue-black?
I like blue-black, not red-black.
Excuse me, red-black and blue-red.
Red-black, I think that the aggressive red-black Pirates deck tends to be not great.
Not fast enough?
It's not that it's not fast enough, it's that when you draft a fast deck, there's enough defensive measures. I feel like it just does not quite get there. I think a red-black mid-range deck, if both colors are open, it's fine. Look, there's nothing. We're not saying anything.
Which is kind of true of all the color pairs, right?
I think all 10 color pairs are legit.
At least playable, right?
Yeah, black-green is probably the one you draft the least.
Yeah.
White-green is not one you're going to be in all that often.
White-green is my least drafted one for sure.
But any of them can be open. So we're not talking about a situation here where I'm never going to touch a red card or I'd never be red-blue. Red-blue can be good, but see, part of the strength of having a team is that we talk about all our experiences drafting because, we all have a lot of reps. Like, I don't know how many drafts I did. I probably did something to, 30 something. Mm-hmm. And, we can put together all that data and people say stuff like,
how many people are on your testing team?
16.
Yeah. So it's a lot of drafts in that room.
So it's like, you talk about red blue and people are like, I don't really win much with red blue. Even the red blue decks I have that look good. Because the other thing we do is we post all our decks.
Yeah.
Not every single one, but people post the decks they play, like screenshots of them in our forum. And what kept happening is people would post good looking red blue decks and not winning.
And then lose.
Yeah. And going 1-1 or 0-1 or whatever. So we came to the conclusion that we just did not like blue red all that much. Like, again, you can draft it. If you start with, 2 Kite Sail Corsairs and then you pick a Bombard, like you can draft blue red. Like, it is a deck.
Yeah.
And it's generally going to be an aggressive pirate deck, and that's fine. But our results with it just weren't great. Same with Merfolk. Merfolk does not come together all that often. First picking a good Merfolk card frequently does not work out.
Yeah, that's been my experience.
You take like the Lord, right? The rare one in a green 1/1. And whenever you play a Merfolk, you get a ++1 counter.
Yeah,
like
elite.
Yeah.
Deeper elite. Yeah.
Now that I'm not on coverage, I don't have to learn card names anymore. So I'm just completely.
I know, I'm trying to remember them. I got to be in the booth in like 10 hours from now.
So you end up like there, and it's just not, not a big deal. Whereas, you end up in Merfolk and it's just not that good.
Yeah.
And we figured that out. And Red Black Pirates is another one which, like, look, your curve of like 2-drop Pirate into Swagger and Corsair into whatever can get bricked pretty hard by a lot of the cards in the format. Mm-hmm. This is not as conducive to really fast decks as Ixalan was. Yeah. There are fewer ways to punch through. There are fewer auras. There's lots of good removal. Removal is actually good now.
The removal's good. The lack of auras is profound.
Yeah.
Right, and they move some of the good ones up to uncommon.
Good defensive cards like, Martyr of Dust, 2-mana 2-1 that dies into a 1/1, or Squire's Devotion, like, ++1 lifelink, and you get a 1 on lifelink.
Squire's Devotion's a problem.
Yeah, when your aggro deck gets you down to 10, but then you just land this on a Dusk Charger, Bad Horse, like that card is great.
Yep.
And you hit them for 6 and get a 1/1 lifelink.
Did you say Bad Horse?
Bad Horse, yeah. And the Thoroughbred of Sin. So it's it's the kind of thing that even if they kill your creature after you get one good hit, and it often does, the damage is done, sometimes they just don't kill it.
Yeah. So, and they get the 1/1 sitting there for value.
So, the decks that we're looking to be in, like I said, are the 3 Esper color pairs, all mix and match, and red-green. And so I think, like, those are the ones that I'm, like, actively looking to be in. And
are you trying to be 2 colors?
Kind of. Okay. So I think that you can splash easily based on the lands. Like, you can pick up the uncommon duels plus Evolving Wilds. Traveler's Amulet is playable, but in an aggro deck, you should not be playing it. Mm-hmm. Like, because it just sucks up your first 2 turns.
Yeah.
But it's fine if your plays start a little bit later, like, because the off-color cards, the bombs are just so broken. There's some nice splashable ones. I've played Charging Monster Swords in my blue-white decks, right? Like,
absolutely, yeah. Tenor Dryads flying out of it.
Right, Tenor Dryad, you're just going to play no matter what if you open it. That's just one of those, on the no pass list. Like. Yeah. But I think you end up, 2 colors most of the time, with the exception of like the treasure decks or the dino decks. The dino decks are often Naya just because there's 3 different colors of dinos.
Yep.
And there's a lot of cards that can help you splash, like Atsakan Seer or Thunderherd Migration or what have you. And what you want out of this format is less than identifying what's open, though that is important. Like, you want to get your 6-pick good card, right? You don't want to be completely squeezed. Is trying to roll with whatever really good cards you open. Like, if you open like Galta Primal Hunger, right, the 12/12, like, you're going to want to put that card in your deck and you're going to want to play it.
Yeah.
If you open the
and
Azor,
this kind of goes back to the getting married to your first pick thing. But you're saying, I want to do this.
If you open Ravenous Chupacabra or Golden Demise, like, you're not always going to play it. It's not 100%, especially for like the double colored cards. But if I open a Ravenous Chupacabra, I think I'm like 80% to have this card in my deck.
Okay.
It's just so good.
Yeah.
And I think that it's hard to pass up some of these cards because the delta between the top, couple percent of cards and the rest is just so big.
It is.
And that's not actually something I love about the format. Like, there's nothing like having a great game and then your opponent starts revealing Tetzmoc and you're just
no.
I see.
Yeah.
But I think that you want to be set up to play these cards, and then you also want to make sure you're, I think, making use of cards other people don't want. So a lot of what our meeting is about as well is to identify cards like Stampeding Horncrest is undervalued. Suncrested Pterodon is undervalued. And end up in a spot where you can fight with other people for all the good first picks that everyone knows about, but you're also getting high pick cards 7th pick, 10th pick. Because if other people aren't valuing them, like Miscloaked Herald, the one on Unblockable, that's not a card we expect to see very many in our decks because we think that the public at large loves that card and we don't. Whereas like Impale and Bombard, everyone gets that right. Everyone knows it's good.
I think this is like a really key thing that people need to understand about how pros approach testing, and what Luis is getting at here is it's not just about figuring out what the best cards are or what the cards aren't. It's about figuring out that relative to how the group, people that you're going to be playing against, values them.
Right. So to use a concrete example, Frilled Deathbidder, right? This is the 3-mana 3/2 Enrage, deal 2 to your opponent. Whether that card is better than Horncrest or not, we're not taking it over Horncrest because we know we can get Horncrest. That's our assumption based on our testing. So we think that, if one card we think is a 6 and the other is a 6.5, but the public thinks one card's an 8 and one card's a 3, we'll spend our early picks on the card that everyone thinks is an 8 because we know we can get the 3s later.
Exactly. And that's just that's I think something that our listeners should be doing as well, right? Especially
there is a metagame.
Online. Yeah, online.
We're changing it as we speak.
Very specific metagame. We have seen this happen before on the show, but it matters. This is how you know you're kind of really doing it, is when you are getting cards that you know are undervalued much later than you would pick them yourself, but you don't pick them at the part where you think you should. You pick them at where you actually end up getting them, and that's called value, right? I mean, that's just you're shoring up that gap.
It's arbitrage. You're exploiting market inefficiencies.
Exactly.
And because what that means is I can spend my first picks on cards I value, knowing I'll get these other cards later, and that is good. That like I said, that's a good exchange. This has happened a couple of times. I remember in history where there have been like pretty sharp evaluations, like I don't know if you remember Sudden Storm from Theros. 3 and a blue, tap 2 creatures, they don't untap, scry 1.
Yes.
This is like Born of the Gods or something.
I do.
We were really high on this card in testing, but we just came to the conclusion we just couldn't be third picking it because no one else wanted this card.
Yes, it was really low. People hated it.
Yeah, and we thought it was great. And, I think we were right. And the card ended up moving up in value for most people after the PT.
After the PT.
Because people played with it more and just like, oh, yeah, this card is good.
I do remember that card, yeah.
So that is a big part of what we try to figure out, too. Also, just looking at how many playables are in each color so you can see the relative depth of each color. And like, when you look at white and you're like, wow, every white card is great. But then you also look at like the best white uncommon, Baffling End, this is the one in a white exile creature cost 3 or less, is worse than the best white common. Like, Luminous End, or Luminous Bonds is better than Baffling End.
Yes, definitely.
Whereas black, not as deep as white for sure. It's got some pretty bad ones like the Gruesome Encore or whatever. 2 and a black, they lose life equal to the number of creatures you control.
Yeah, really bad.
But black has the 2 best uncommons in the set. It has Chupacabra and Golden Demise.
And Golden Demise, yeah. Like number 1 and number 2.
Right. Yeah. Yes. With a bullet. I think those cards are also very close together.
I do too. Like,
in a couple of weeks, we might switch them.
I have been creeping towards the Golden Demise end of the spectrum.
Just Plague Wind.
Yeah. And like the interesting part about Golden Demise is like, I actually had a chat with Simon Gertzen about this because I kind of put him on the spot. We did a little segment before and I said, which one? Because this to me is a discussion at this point, which one's better. And to me, it's a really interesting dynamic because if you look at Chupacabra, it is your solid double, right? It is your basically always going to be good. It's going to be one of the better cards in your deck. There's really no scenario in Limited where it's bad. And you're just always going to get your value
from it. You can also draft like Recover and stuff like that. Yeah. Just to really exploit it.
Yeah. But if you look at the swings that you get from a card like Golden Demise.
Chupacabra is never going to be a 10.
It's never going to be a 10.
So it was an 8.5.
Exactly.
Golden Demise can be a straight up flat 10 with a bullet.
Yes. And it can also be like a 3, or even worse. It can also be like, I'm just way ahead and I can't even
It can be a card you sideboard out.
Yes. So it is interesting because, you do have to really give credence though, as you mentioned, the difference between an 8.5 and a 10 is not always,
it's not
incremental. Yeah. It's not just like 1.5. It's, it goes up a lot more and it can win you games that you could never, win otherwise. How do you value that?
One of the things I did in this format was I kept thinking, as I looked at different boards over different courses, different drafts, like, man, Golden Demise would be the best possible card here. And just come to that conclusion.
Over and over.
Yeah, Golden Demise is just the best.
Yeah.
So I still have Chupacabra above it. I don't think it's by much. Yeah. And it doesn't really matter because you almost never pick between them.
Kind of a 1A, 1B type scenario.
Yeah. And I think that in Pack 2...
I've never chosen between... I don't think they're in the same print.
Yeah. And I think Pack 2, I could imagine decks that would want one over the other or whatever. Sure, like if you have 2 Impales in your deck, I think you should just take Golden Demise.
I agree.
Again, not that you really have to choose between them, but...
Yeah.
So The part where I veered from the team the most is the deck that I've been drafting, almost forcing, not forcing. Because, look, if I open a good green card or a good red card, I'll still take it.
Yep.
I'm not third picking Sea Legs or Sailor of Means, but the deck that I find myself in the most is the Sailor of Means deck. And,
oh, yeah.
And what I mean by that is a blue deck, a base blue deck that plays defensively and just tries to play all the best cards it sees. This doesn't mean I'm all 5-color nonsense. What it means in practice is that I'm either white blue or black blue.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm near mono blue with like 2 or 3 splashes, but usually white blue, because I find that the good white defensive cards like Suncrested Pterodon, like Divine Verdict, like Snowborn Sentry, you just get them so late that I always end up with enough playables, and then you're just outrageously splashing with no shame. Like
any great rares you open, you just
even the double color ones, as long as you have enough Sailors, Traveler's Amulets, Prosperous Pirates is really important as well, especially for the double colors. Mm-hmm. And what you're trying to do is play defensive cards like Gleaming Barrier. You're trying to play Sailor of Means. You're trying to play, like I said, Martyr of Dusk, Snubhorn Sentry. You're trying to not die. Sea Legs. I like having 2 Sea Legs in all of these decks.
Okay.
Sadly, it does not kill, Kite Sail Corsair or the Pathfinder the Goblin, because those are both pirates.
Yes, and those are 2 of the best 2-drops in
but
the
it
set.
does stop Guildgrove Stalker. It does stop Exultant Sky Marcher. It's really good against vampires. It's really, really good against merfolk. It stops, the Mistcloaked Herald. So, and then you are trying to finish the game with the bombs you open, while prolong the game with lots of removal spells.
This is a classic LSV.
Oh yeah, I love these kind of decks.
Archetype.
And when these decks are good, like Ben, one of the first things Ben said when he showed up is, I think you're going to do well in this draft.
Yeah.
He's like, this format really plays into what you like. And Huey said the same thing. I didn't test with Huey, so he doesn't, we're not exchanging
but
sensitive information, but he was just like, I think this format's good for you or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's not because I'm like, all I do is play removal spells and bombs.
That was old Luis.
But it's more like, I think that this format does reward knowing how to craft a good control deck. And now that that's here, I not only really like doing it, it's also something I find you can put together without high picks. Like, yes, you need good cards.
Yes.
Like, you do need, a good way to finish the game. And there's a couple ways you can go that way. And it does not always have to literally involve rares. But almost all the key cards are commons, and not even high pick commons, which is awesome.
That's right where you want to be.
It's super strong, and that's the reason I'm in this deck.
So it means that you get to use up any picks you want on off-color, on-color bombs, rares, that kind of stuff. So, like, what kind of stuff are we talking about?
So I remember a draft where I first picked Tendershoot Dryad.
Okay.
Right? This is 400 green, 2/2, insane bomb. I second picked Impale.
Okay.
And I third picked Waterknot over Thrashing Brontodon.
Oh, wow. So this is what you mean by forcing it, right? It's not that, like, you literally are sitting down and just doing that, but you know where this thing's going, and it's not green-black Thrashing Brontodon deck.
It isn't. And I think it's blue-black Splashing Tendershoot Dried Off Treasures, because, again, you can get Sailor of Means and Secrets of the Golden City. These are both very, very important cards for this deck. Pretty late. Not, like, insanely late. I don't expect 8th pick Secrets, but I do expect 8th pick Sailor some of the time.
Yeah.
Like...
And you, of course, you get them in all 3 packs.
Yeah, they're in all the packs. You also have, like I said, Gleaming Barrier and Direfleet Hoarder and Prosperous Pirates as ways to generate treasure as well. Contract
Gleaming
killing.
Barrier being just like block, they use a combat trick, you're like, fantastic.
Or they do nothing and you just have time to cast. Secrets of the Golden City is really powerful. This is 3 mana draw 3 a lot of the games.
Yes.
That is an effect you generally do not see at common, especially at 3 mana.
Yes.
Because even though you can't cast it until later, right? I would say you ascend on around turn 6 or 7 most of the time. Sometimes a little earlier, but not usually much earlier. Mm-hmm. But you get to cast Secrets and then play another spell the same turn. Sometimes even 2 spells if you get on a cheap enough curve. Mm-hmm. And that's really powerful because you're casting your card draw spell, you're refilling, and you're still adding to the board.
Okay.
So like my pick order for that is I still have Waterknot, first. But I and same with like Impale or Moment of Craving or Luminous Bonds. I like Luminous Bonds a lot too because I'm end up white-blue or white-black a lot of the time. Not Bombard as high because I found red-blue just lends itself to be aggressive. Red does not offer really anything at common except Bombard, and Mutiny, which is like mediocre.
Yeah.
But then you want to prioritize, like I said, off-color bombs, Secrets of the Golden City, Sailor of Means, and then all the good defensive cards among those colors. And Dust Charger is also quite good because you are hitting the City's Blessing a good amount of the time.
Yeah, so we should talk about that too. In many ways, this deck ends up playing out like an Ascend deck. right? I mean, it has a strong Ascend sub-theme, shall we say.
For sure.
You know, you're getting Sailor of Means it's not just a good blocker that fixes your mana.
It's two permanents on the board.
Right. So
all your removal in the white-blue version also
gives you a permanent.
Gives you a permanent. Yeah, Luminous Spawns and Water Knot and Sea Legs.
That's right.
You know, just leave permanents on the board. Also for your opponent, but you know you care about Ascend. They may ascend.
So you were saying you get it turn 6, turn 7. What are the payoffs? You mentioned Secrets of the Golden City
is a big one.
Snubhorn Sentry?
Snubhorn Sentry is not a payoff. I would count that as just a defensive creature.
Just a creature that you can block with.
Yeah, you don't usually finish the game with them or anything, but it's just a way to put something on the board that does something.
What other stuff?
Dust Charger is, again, a payoff because it can be defensive, but it can also finish the game.
Are you Spire Windering?
Infrequently. I don't find Spire Winder to be particularly good.
It's not really great.
No.
Because it's not a good defensive card, right? 4 mana with not very big stats.
Whereas Suncrested Pterodon is a very good defensive card. Right. I like that card quite a bit.
Also, I literally get confused every time I see the card and think that you need a City's Blessing to give it Vigilance. So maybe they could have just done that for me.
The payoffs are that when you open a good rare in Pack 2 or Pack 3, you get to take it. Or you get to play the one you open in Pack 1, right? Even if the color's not open. The other payoff is that you can often have a board where you're blanking more of their threats than with fewer number of answers, because a board of Suncrested Pterodon and like 2 Sailor Beams, for example, can often hold off 4 or 5 creatures, depending on what those creatures are.
Definitely.
And then I
like that.
Yeah, I think that is quite powerful. Secrets of the Golden City, like I said, is a big card draw thing. And then another sub-theme of this deck is auras, which is funny because it doesn't make sense that like a control deck would be doing this. But I found both Squire's Devotion and Mark of the Vampire quite good here because you can slap them on Dust Charger.
Yes.
Or Suncrested Pterodon if you need to. And then
are you playing...
Sometimes you play Soul Occurrence.
Solar Rapids.
Solar Rapids, yeah. And I like...
Because I have lost to that with Mark of the Vampire on it. I even had an opponent play 2 Mark of the Vampire. You know, that is not interact... Like, I just lost on the spot.
So, you know, Soul of the Currents is...
I'll super say that in the booth tomorrow.
Anyway, Soul Occurrence is not a very good blocker, but...
Really bad. 5 mana, 2 toughness is...
So what I think about it is, first of all, it's a finisher sometimes if you, even without auras. It's just a way to clock them. That's mostly out of the board. It's actually something you need to be worried about yourself.
Yes.
So that's why Suncrested Pterodon is just great.
Gobbles up those Solar Rapids.
But if you have like a couple... auras, then you can just put them on Soul Occurrence and just completely demolish your opponent.
So how many of these do you want to play?
Usually...
Like between 0 and 1 is the right number?
I would say 0 and 1 souls. Squire's Devotion and Mark, and also Curious Obsession is a very good card.
That card's really
This is a 1 mana, channel creature ++1.
Be picky about when you cast it, but it will reward you.
So, like a subset of this deck is a deck that had, like if I start with a Curious Obsession, I sometimes draft this deck too, because you can draft more of like a blue...
Because it doesn't seem like it fits this deck particularly well.
A blue-white Auras Flyers deck is very good. Squire's Resplendent Griffin is the blue-white gold card, which is very good in this deck as well. The 2/2, when you ascend and it attacks, gets a ++1 counter. So one of the versions I've had of this deck like 3 or 4 times is a Curious Obsession and like 2 Squire's Devotion, or 1 Squire's Devotion and a Mark of the Vampire, and then 1 or 2 Soul Occurrence, maybe a Slippery Scoundrel if I'm lucky. This is the 2/2 unblockable hex.
You like that guy?
Yes, I think it's just a good finisher.
It's a good finisher, but it doesn't really do much until that point.
It doesn't block well, but if I have an aura in my deck, I'm always slamming.
You're fine with it. Okay.
Or you just put these cards on Dust Charger. I also prioritize Dive Down in this deck. So like I said, this is almost like a separate deck. But it's like a 5 or 6 card package of like 2 to 3 auras, 3 if you're lucky, a Dive Down, 1 or 2 hexproof creatures, and then the normal like biggish creatures that you put in your deck. Because the payoffs for hitting with like a Squire's Devotion Dust Charger
are huge.
It's huge. It's like you're getting card advantage every time you hit them. You're gaining 6, and that's just a really big swing to, it's hard to come back from. Sometimes you actually play Mystical Carol if you have like 2 Curiosities.
Yes, I have done that.
Which is kind of funny.
You do go off.
And Kitesail Corsair, see, another funny thing is Kitesail Corsair is actually fine in this deck. Because it's a 2/1 that can block. It doesn't fly, it only flies while attacking, but it can block normally.
Sure.
But I never have it because I never take it early.
Okay.
So I just never have it in my deck.
Does. Yeah. Okay, I see.
And, the blue commons, some of them fade, in terms of value here, like Deadeye Hauler.
Deadeye Rig Hauler.
And the Crashing Tide are just not that good.
Yeah.
Because you're not a tempo deck. You're not looking to do that.
You're just rarely getting that big advantage. Yeah.
So another thing that's really important with this deck is prioritizing sideboard cards. Because you want counter spells like Negate, Hornswoggle, Cancel, In Dark Inquiry, this is a 2 and a black. You know, they discard a card. Yeah. Like
these are all anti-Tetzamok tech.
Yeah, you want, because one of the biggest weaknesses of this deck, and some of the reason that some of the people on my team really don't like it, is they are like, I always just lose to bombs when I play this.
Because you're sitting there prolonging the game and effectively making sure that they will draw
giving you time to draw your Profane Procession and use it to kill me.
Yeah.
You know, that's why you want a Naturalizer to demystify in your sideboard. This is giving you time to draw your Tetzamok, to draw your Rekindling Phoenix, whatever. Well, Rekindling Phoenix actually is not a really big deal for this deck. It's got bonds and Waterknot. Yeah, sure. But I think that sideboard cards are pretty important. I also just do like
these can be off color, right? You said naturalize. You meant naturalize.
Yes,
right?
I actually meant literal naturalize. If you have enough, if you have 5 or 6 treasure cards, which sometimes you can get, you don't really need any other lands. Sometimes you just have an Evolving Wilds and a Traveler's Amulet. You put in 1 forest, all of a sudden you have 6 sources. You have 2 Sailor of Means and a Prosperous Pirates and a Traveler's Amulet and an Evolving Wilds and a forest. Just cast whatever you want. Like, Zakama, the Primal Calamity. This is the Naya Dino Lord that costs 9.
Card's sweet.
I'm going to first pick that card if I open it.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, I'm not going to take it over a Chupacabra, but I'm going to take it over all the commons.
Yes, it is unbeatable bomb, and you're actually ramping and fixing with those sailors.
Yeah. I mean, you play a Prosperous Pirates, you have it there already.
Yeah.
So I think that this is the kind of card that you're able to play, even if you open like Impact 2 some of the time.
Have you played much Kumina's Awakening?
Yes, Kumina's Awakening is quite good.
You like it?
Yeah, we undershot on all the Ascend cards basically in the set review. Like,
sure. What I think we actually hit pretty well though, because what we said was if you're able to make Ascend happen, then all of these cards go up in value.
It's more that the format's a little bit slower, so there's a little bit more room for this kind of stuff to get going.
Yes, Kumina's Awakening. Also, you are like the decks you're drafting are really. I think you're maybe even underestimating how proactively they're ascending. Like, you have like tons of auras. Yeah. It's removal, but it's auras. Right. You have treasure cards like ascend decks. You can ascend on turn 5 sometimes. Yeah, it's just interesting. It's not common to do that. Yeah. It's mostly turn 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. It's just weird because like I want to call these ascend decks, but it's not like these decks are all about ascend, right? No, it's not even, sometimes you only have 2 or 3 cards, but they just get to ascend so, easily because they're combining multiple permanent cards that are also defensive. It's just that they're doing exactly what you'd want. Because when you don't ascend is when you get into a fight with somebody. Yeah. When you're like, I block. You're an aggressive deck and trading. But that's the funny thing about this deck is it's got all these like 0-4, 1-4, 2-5s, auras that lock down your creatures, plays a land every turn. It makes treasures, and it's like ascending by accident, just because it's just the way the play pattern of the deck is to do that, which is not, an accident, I'm sure. Yes. In terms of card design. And that leaves the ascend cards as, pretty good rates. Like, we're not talking about busted cards here, but Secrets of the Golden City is not a common, right? In the sense that 3 mana draw 3 is not, cast it for 3. Not a common effect. So not at all. I think that it is quite powerful to get to harness that. Another card which I don't like in this deck, but I think has gone up in value is Legion Conquistador. I think we're saying that the 2 and a white 2/2 that we ended up liking it at the end of the last set, and I really much better now. Here. Yeah, I agree. I think it's really good. I've picked it way earlier than I did. Really good combo, Sanctum Glorifier to 4 mana 3/3. You just go like turn 3 Conquistador, Sanctum Glorifier, put a counter on it. You have 2 3/3s in play with 2 more 2/2s in your hand, and you're just pressuring your opponent and backing it up with decent removal. Again, all commons here. So yeah. What's the most number of Sailor Means you've had? 5 is the greatest number. That was mine too. Yeah. I was really hoping I'd get you. No 6s, but Kenji had a 6. Yes. Yeah. Or Kenji Egashira had a 6. So did Kenji Sumura. And Sumura. I have to give a shout out to Kenji Sumura, by the way. He broke this. Yeah. He's the one. And we actually talked about this last week, Kenji Egashira and I. Yeah. Because we were at the GP when Kenji Sumura was posting his Sailor Moon. Yeah, because Kenji Sumura was posting these on Twitter. And we were like, we got to try that. And I remember seeing one of his decks on Twitter had 6 Sailor Means. Like the first one he posted, I'm like, this is awesome. Yes. And then I tried that. I'm like, yep, this is awesome. He also 3-0'd with both of those decks, but also he's Kenji, so I'm like, eh. But, Kenji is in the Hall of Fame, like, yes. Sumura. Exactly. But our Kenji, who's not in the Hall of Fame, but did qualify for the Pro Tour, we went back to the hotel. That's props to him, by the way. That is awesome. I'm so happy for him. It's so funny because, of the people who have never been qualified for the Pro Tour, Kenji's at the top of the list for a lot of the pros of people they would want to qualify. It's funny. Like I remember just having this conversation with lots of just random pros that we all just want Kenji to qualify. It's sweet. Well, the thing is that he's also really good. Like I get it that he's not like platinum level, whatever, but Kenji's really good at Magic.
Well, I think the main thread is that we all know how much Kenji plays Magic and how good he is at Magic, and know that like he has, I'm not going to say deserved because no one deserves anything, but we all like to see him get a shot at the Pro Tour.
He had 6 winning-ins.
Yeah, and he had so many close misses that I think it is sweet. But
anyway, he didn't want to brag about it on the show, but we'll brag for him because that was great. But we went right back to the hotel room, him and I, and just started jamming 4-color decks.
Yeah.
We were just like as many Sailor of Means as we could get. We just went all in on it, and I had a similar feeling to the one you did. I just thought, I can kind of get away with anything.
It's like, this isn't a joke.
Yes.
Like when I first saw the deck on Twitter, I'm like, haha, this is funny.
Yeah.
It's not a joke. This is what we thought might happen in Ixalan. It did not. But now that we're in Rivals, I think it is quite legit. And look,
I wanted to ask you about weaknesses. So you mentioned that some of the guys on the team thought, I'm not in love with this deck because it can lose to opponents. So, is that a legit argument? Like you're saying, well, I'll cast Hornswoggle. I mean, you're starting to have a pretty full deck here, full of kind of a mishmash of stuff if you start jamming Hornswoggles and such into your deck.
That card's playable anyway, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But the weaknesses of this deck are, I think, twofold. One is that it is soft to opposing bombs in the sense that it gives them more time to not only play them, but to draw them.
Yep.
Like, you can lose to...
So that is a legit argument from your teammates.
Yes. Uh-huh. And not even just bombs, just anything. Like, it is a good defensive deck, but if you play against the Merfolk deck that has 3 Mistcloak Heralds, sometimes you might have a bad matchup because you can't kill them, and they're going to kill you with their little unblockable dudes, even if they're not pumping them.
Or they cast 7 vampires, and they're like, here's the Lord. Yeah.
And the flip side of that is that if you don't have bombs yourself, the deck can end up anemic. Like, it's not a good look to be a control deck with no way to close.
Absolutely.
I've never decked myself. It doesn't really come to that. But if you end up too heavy on the defensive stuff and too light on the bombs, they might have a well-timed removal spell, or your bomb is in the bottom 3 cards of your deck, and then all of a sudden you're just not killing them, and your deck's got a lot of air in it.
Because you've got a fundamental strategy as far as that goes, in the sense that you're giving yourself the chance to play literally any of the most powerful cards that you see in any capacity, whether you open it or get it past you.
Sometimes you just don't see the powerful cards.
Sometimes they don't happen. That is the truth.
And I think that the deck has. I think it's actually fairly consistent, the good versions of it. But if you miss on like Treasure Makers, you can't just go nuts, because all of a sudden you're playing a 4-color deck and you're like, well, my mana's actually not good here.
Right.
And so I've had decks where I first picked, let's say, Golden Demise, ended up blue-white and not been able to play Golden Demise or Twilight Prophet or whatever double-color card, because I just didn't get any Prosperous Pirates and only 2 Sailors, which is functional for white-blue or blue-black. But it means you can't just go nuts and play your Galta Primal Hunger, right? Sure. Like, you can't just do everything.
Where if you get the Sailors, you're like, blank check.
Right. And that does lead to some consistency problems too, where like sometimes you're just stuck on 3 lands and you have to use your treasures to cast your 4-drops. And then later you draw your splashed off-color bomb, and you're like, well, I had to sack all my treasures just to be functional. Mm-hmm. So
it's funny. I've taken a similar approach to you in that I've been drafting this deck as well, or I've been drafting the black-red, blue-red, like the super aggressive decks. Like I'm talking Buccaneers Bravado with Tillinolli's Crown. I'm trying to like steal wins type deck versus, a lot of menace, remove a thing, mutiny a thing, attack you for a bunch, those type of decks. Or I'm on the other end. The decks I want to avoid at this point are like the blue-green or the black-green decks, these sort of just mid-rangey.
Oh yeah, I think black-green is real bad.
Yeah, I'm just not really making a stand.
My one exception is Path of Discovery, Lurking Chupacabra, the enchantment that makes all your guys explore, and then the Chupacabra that gives -2/-2 whenever you explore.
Oh, Lurking. Yeah, sure.
The Chupacabra tribe is they're small but resilient.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, I've certainly enjoyed playing the slower deck a lot more as well. Any other big picture stuff stand out before we kind of sign off here?
I think that there's still a good amount left to discover in this format.
It's a good format.
There is a lot of interesting threads and interactions and like small groups of cards which work together well, and I think that are worth talking about. So
I
think we'll just see that pan out, and I think there is a bit of a metagame effect too, because I'm talking about liking these specific cards or decks or whatever partially because they're underdrafted. If that becomes not the case, then that will lead me to adjust too. If I can't get 5th or 6th pick Sailor Beans, then maybe this deck isn't good at that point, and you have to do something else. And there's plenty more to do. This is not, I remember talking to one of my teammates, Pat Cox, and being under we were like, both had this weird feeling where like, I took a 5-drop over a 2-drop because I had enough 2-drops because you don't need 7. You know, you have your 4 or 5 2 drops, and it's like
weight you carry around.
From Ixalan, where it's like, yep, never have enough 2s, you know, and that's just not the case anymore, which I think leads to a little bit more exploration in the format.
From the team's perspective, did anybody else bring in, like, are they all on board with you as far as this deck?
No,
Were there people that were like, this deck isn't good, you should be doing this other
There's some
thing?
people who are skeptical of the deck in general, like the strategy in general.
So what would they say would be a strategy that they'd prefer?
Yeah, just draft normal decks.
Okay, just normal 2-color decks.
Have some respect for the game, you know. But I think one thing to be clear on, and I reiterated this point a few times, is I'm not sitting here saying take Sailor of Means over Bombard. You know, I'm just sitting here saying I'm going to have my eye open. If blue seems open, I'm jumping in with both feet.
Yeah, and
you know, I'm going to prioritize a little higher, but. Yeah, I think that this deck uses a lot of underdrafted cards, which is why I ended up in it so often.
Okay. What's your confidence level going into tomorrow?
High, which, you know, probably means I'm going to do horribly, but...
I don't think it does. I think your confidence level is it correlates pretty well. All right, well, we should let you go, Luis, because it has gotten a bit late here. And,
I just realized I have to register my deck.
You have to register your deck, and right now you have... Well, you've got an hour and a half to do it, but... Yeah. And then I got to get this thing edited and everything as well because I got to be in the booth early in the morning. So we're going to call it a show here. Just if you're in Luis's pod online, just don't draft this deck. Just let the guy have his fun, right? I mean, come on. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. Anything that you need related to the podcast can be found at lrcast.com. I want to remind you that the show is brought to you by channelfireball.com. If you want to trade in your cards, you can do so. It's very easy. You go on their website. They'll tell you how much they'll give you for each. And if you'd like to trade them in for store credit, you'll get a whopping 30% bonus on it that you can use for sealed product like, you know, Rivals of Ixalan booster boxes or whatever to get a draft going with your friends. Or even singles and stuff for your latest constructed deck, all of that stuff over at CFB. And that trade-in is just really straight up value. You should do it. Don't let those rares rot away on your desk. You should send them in to Channel Fireball. That is going to do it for this one, PT Insider. Next week, we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming from home, not from Spain. And we'll talk to you then.
Well, I figured since it's the PT Insider, I could... you know, update us with some of the more interesting occurrences that happened during testing. Plus, I figure worst comes to worst, this would be better than the sign you got last week. So,
oh man, he got buried for that one.
So, one of the things we referenced a few times actually is we had a whiteboard in our testing room, and there was one rule on the whiteboard, and it was have some respect for the game.
Yeah, there was a few other words added in, but
they were added in later.
Yeah,
have some goddamn respect for the
effing. Yeah, yeah. That was funny though. That was a quote from Sam Pardee.
Yeah,
to Matt Nass, who was actually I was watching the stream that they did when that happened, and Matt was way ahead in a game and made a play that was just like reckless and too clever. And, and Sam was kind of just half watching the game, and he goes, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" And then he said that to him. He told him to have some respect for the game. It was really funny.
Yeah. So that was part of it. Another good maneuver was Paulo Vitor, PV, was looking for cards, right? Because he at the last minute decided to switch decks, and he asked Mike Segrist, who's on our team, "Hey, do you have these cards?" And Segrist's like, "Yeah, I have my cards are unsorted. They're in this like really long box, but you know, I have them in there. Just go through them. Also, if you see, if you see these cards I need for my deck, just can you go ahead and pull them out?" And so Paulo looks through the whole box, pulls out the cards Siggy wants, but just doesn't find any of the cards for his deck. And he just looks over. It's like, "Did you just trick me into pulling out cards for your deck?" And Siggy's like, "Well, I wasn't sure if I had them, but I figured at worst you'd get the cards from my deck."
Are you serious?
It was really sly.
Oh my God, Siggy should win the PT for that move alone.
Oh yeah, that was checkmate. I also alluded to this earlier, but Ben was not at our limited meeting.
Well, hold on. You're talking about Ben Stark.
So Ben Stark is on the team because of his limited prowess and other reasons. But he shows up in. So first of all, none of us have talked to him for a week.
The week before the Pro Tour.
Before the Pro Tour. He hasn't posted anything. He's basically not saying anything. We're like wondering. We don't know when he's getting to Europe, right? We just don't know. At one point, BK, one of the guys on our team, was watching Gabby's stream, and she got paired against Ben.
On stream?
On stream. So we could see that he was playing Moto. We had her message him, And he's like, oh yeah, I'm recording a draft video, but I'm going to be in Europe tomorrow. Oh, this is on Wednesday.
By the way, that video is up on CFB.
Hey, there we go. So he shows up on Thursday. Our limited meeting is also on Thursday, right? But he lands, I guess, after it. We still don't know where he is. And then at some point he posts on our team forum like
he's on your team, right?
Yes.
So he's a valued member of this testing team?
3 p.m. Well, he's a member of the testing team at least. It's 3 p.m. Thursday. We still have not seen or talked to Ben, basically. And he posts a comment on one of Raptor's like posts like, oh yeah, I'm on Moto testing this deck. So From here. So he showed up, went to his room, started playing Moto, still not talked or seen to any team members. That's 7 hours before their deck lists are due or something. We're like, Ben, come down to the conference room, at least like say hi, you know? So that was.
Oh my. Did he come down?
He came down. Begrudgingly.
Frustrated and complaining.
And so then we had negotiated that Ben had to be there for the limited meeting next time. He hadn't agreed to this, by the way. The negotiations have only started. He's asking if we can hold a limited meeting Thursday night, but we don't want to do that either. So.
Oh, you should do that. Then I can do that.
Yeah, I can see you.
Yeah, I think Ben has something.
Cheon was so disruptive this time that I think we're gonna ban coverage from it. So
come on,
that was but a sampling of
wow. The nonsense.
The organized world of
we won't tell him what the banned and restricted list was.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I will actually say that was also on that whiteboard. The cards that were banned from our testing because they wasted too much time were Niv Magus Elemental,
yes.
Harrow,
Terrarian,
but only in combination with Scapeshift. You could test Terrarian, but not if you had the card Scapeshift in your deck. And I don't remember what the last card was, but it should have probably been Hardened Scales. So,
all right. Well, good luck.
All right, we'll need it.
Yeah.